Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, dear guests, colleagues, dear students, everybody who has joined us here today in Multilab at the Ladislav Sutnar Faculty of Design and Art, and also online. It is my great pleasure and honor to welcome you all on the occasion of the Meet and Greet event with the laureates of the Ladislav Sutnar Prize 2024. A special welcome goes to our distinguished guests who have traveled from afar to join us today. So please join me in welcoming our guests. Debbie Millman, one of the most creative and influential designers of today. Penny Macbeth, she's the director of the prestigious Glasgow School of Art. And Madoka Nishi, the editor-in-chief of the prestigious Idea magazine from Japan. Thank you all for coming. And of course, let me welcome the Dean of the Ladislav Sutnar Faculty of Design and Art, Wojciech Aubrecht, and invite him on stage to give his opening speech.
Dobré odpoledne všem, já vás pozdravím ještě v češtině, abyste rozuměli aspoň mému hlubokému díku, že jste všichni přišli v tak velkém počtu. Děkuji. Dear laureates of the Ladislav Sutnar Prize, dear guests, dear colleagues, dear students. This year it is the 13th time we are awarding the Ladislav Sutnar Prize. The scenery in which this happens changes every year. So the first time it was on the opening of this great faculty building, 2012. Later, 2015, it was in the context of the European Capital of Culture, Pilsen 2015. Subsequently, maybe, or for sure, less pleasant events, the COVID-19 pandemic, but we did hand over the prizes even then. And later on, in the shadow of the Russian aggression in Ukraine. With the time, the choice of the laureates changed as well. Where at first it was primarily about iconic institutions, bearers of traditional values, and people that directly participated in the development of our faculty. In the recent years, there has been a shift in emphasis to personalities and institutions that represent the best in their field and at the same time intensively engage in very current issues of today's world and the role of art and design for our community and society. Tomorrow, as mentioned, this year's prize will be handed over to Debbie Millman, renowned designer, writer, educator from the United States. The Glasgow School of Arts, one of the most prestigious art institutions and art schools in the world from the UK, and the Idea magazine, leading art magazine from Japan. Tomorrow, the ceremony will take place at the Pilsen Town Hall, and I cordially invite you all to take part in this celebration in person. If tomorrow there will be an appreciation of these exceptional representatives and icons of contemporary applied art and design, and celebration of the fact that we find ourselves on the same path, so to speak, that the community, this network of laureates of the Ladislav Sutnar Prize is expanding with new friends, today is the day of acquaintance. Our guests had the opportunity to see our faculty and get to know our workplaces and our mission. Now it is our chance to get to know this year's laureates in more detail. I'm excited and very happy that in the midst of turbulent world events, we are now meeting here at this moment to pause for a moment on the exceptionality of human action and our mission, on the beautiful phenomena of creation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your introductory speech. And let's go on. Ladislav Sutnar, this is the name that resonates with our school's mission, vision, activities, and everyday life. Back in 2012, as has already been mentioned, in honor of Sutnar's lives, work, visions, and artistic legacy, the Sutnar faculty established the Ladislav Sutnar Prize. And this is an award that recognizes the work and lifelong achievements of exceptional artists and also institutions that make a lasting impact on the world of art and design. They inspire others, they reshape design, and they create and design the world for all of us, just like Ladislav Sutnar did. Today we are here to meet those who share his passion for innovation, for creative and visionary thinking. The past honorees of the Ladislav Sutnar Prize include, for example, graphic designers Stephen Heller and Pekka Loire, sculptor Magdalena Jetelová, also designer Stuart Haygarth, and institutions such as ZKM Karlsruhe, Holon Institute of Technology, Ars Electronica Linz, or the Cooper Hewitt National Design Museum, and others. Tomorrow, 3 new names will enter this prestigious list, and they will receive the Ladislav Sutnar Prize for 2024. Today, we are privileged to meet them here for their presentations. So, be open-minded. There will be time for asking questions after each presentation. So please don't be shy and use this opportunity to learn from the best. When we finish with the presentations, we will meet for a few minutes for a nice exhibition opening at the Incubator Gallery, where the laureate exhibition will be open. And now it is time to start with the presentations, because that's what you are here for. Our first speaker is Debbie Millman, a renowned designer, brand strategist, and educator from the United States, as we have already heard. As the founder of the Design Matters, the first podcast dedicated to design, she has inspired designers worldwide through conversations with creative thinkers. At the School of Visual Arts in New York, she co-founded the world's first graduate program in branding, shaping the next generation of design leaders. Her work combines innovation with a profound understanding of how visual identity can impact culture. We are honored to welcome Debbie Millman.
I should get used to a mic by now, right? All of my podcasts. So I am Debbie Millman, and I am so honored to be here. Thank you so much to the faculty here at the university. I am humbled by this really prestigious award, and thank you as well to my fellow laureates who I join here in Pilsen. As you've heard, I do a lot of different things. I am a designer, I'm an editor, a writer, an educator, a podcaster, an artist, a strategist, and an activist. And The only reason that I can say that I do all of these things is because I'm 63 and I've been working for over 40 years. So if you divide all of these things up into that number of years, it makes it ever so slightly more plausible that I can do these different things. But I've really always been someone that liked to do a lot of different things at once. The one bit of advice that I can give you about doing more things than just one at the same time is it will take a lot longer to achieve any sense of mastery at any of them if it takes you, because it'll take you that much longer to practice. So just wanted to start a little bit with just one image that really defines my entire upbringing, and it is this. This is a drawing that I did when I was 8 years old. I am a native New Yorker, which means I was born in New York. I was born in the borough of Brooklyn. I lived there for 2 years, and then my family moved to Queens, where I lived until I was about the middle of 3rd grade. And then I moved with my family to Staten Island, another of the boroughs. And I lived there until 6th grade, at which point my parents got divorced, my mother got remarried, and she took me and my brother and my 2 new siblings from her second husband to Long Island, where I spent the rest of my education until I went to college. And though I've lived in Manhattan now since 1983, 41 years, I didn't have a lot of exposure to Manhattan, which was and is, I guess, the centerpiece of the boroughs. But for some reason, I knew enough, whether it be from television or any media at the time, to draw a scene in Manhattan when I was about 8 years old. So I hadn't really spent any time there, but somehow I drew a city scene with buses and delivery trucks and a taxi. I'm the little girl in the center with my mother, and I believe that she's wearing a very popular Barbie outfit at the time called Tangerine Dream. Now, the thing that I was surprised when I saw this, I found this when I was in my 40s. It was in a box of things that were being held for me by my mother. And when I looked at it, it occurred to me that at 8 years old, not having any sense of what Manhattan was really like, I drew my entire future life. The thing that most intrigued me by this drawing was, yes, I understood that there were taxis and buses and so forth, but if you look really carefully, you'll see there's a truck there that says Lay's potato chips. There's a bank that says bank, and a cleaners that says cleaners, and a taxi that says taxi. But somehow I knew enough to draw the Lay's logo on the truck. It wasn't just potato chips, it was Lay's potato chips with the logo. Fast forward 40 years, 40 some odd years, and I live in New York City. I take the buses, I take taxis, I go to the bank, I go to the dry cleaners, and I draw logos for a living. If I only knew I had predicted the entire thing when I was 8 years old. Would have saved me a lot of grief. Oh, let me go back. So most of my career, most of my early career from the 80s and the 90s and into the 2000s was as a package designer and a brand strategist. And I consider the first 10 years of my career, so the first 10 years after college, for those that are still in college, I consider that decade to be a decade of what I call experiments in rejection and failure. Everything I did seemed to be not good enough. I tried to apply to graduate school and I didn't get in. I tried to apply to a very prestigious art program and I was rejected. The only thing that I seemed to be able to be accepted at doing was design. And so more or less as a fallback position, I became a designer. It wasn't until about 20 years into working as a designer that I found my stride and spent quite a lot of time working on some of the world's largest brands. The Burger King logo, the Tropicana packaging, and I know that here in Europe, things look a bit different than they do in the United States, but quite a lot of the work that I did is still in the marketplace, even though brands tend to change rather quickly and rather often. And I like to think that that's because of the work having a real timelessness to it. The biggest challenge when working on global brands is sort of taking your hand out of it and it not looking like something that you did, but looking very much intrinsic to the brand's purpose and values and vision. And because I had that 10 years, that first 10 years of my career as this sort of decade of experiments and rejection and failure, when I finally started to do well, what I considered to be well in my career, I gave up all the other things that I was doing, despite the fact that I always, as I mentioned, like to do a lot of different things. I was always drawing and painting and writing bad poetry and trying to make music, and I was very much into textile design and art. When I achieved a little bit of success, it became intoxicating. And I then started to stop doing all of the other things that I was doing because for the first time in my life, I felt successful, and the idea that I was someone that was doing something that finally felt like it mattered was all I wanted to keep doing. And so I did that for about another 10 years or so. And at that point, probably in the early 2000s, 2001, 2002, 2003, I started to worry that all of my creative spirit was maybe going away. Maybe it was dying. I had become so consumed by my outward success and the appreciation that my work was beginning to get that I had stopped doing these other things that had given me real joy and seemed to have dedicated myself to corporate work that was all about shelf presence and market share and a return on investment. So I had a little bit of a crisis at that point, which is when I then started to once again start to pick up the things that I began to feel I had lost. But that was also then a time of rediscovery and starting from scratch with trying to master these other things that were so intrinsic to who I was. So that's when I decided to start this podcast, Design Matters. I started the podcast, believe it or not, in 2005. The plans for it started in 2004, which will make February 2025 the 20th anniversary of this podcast. At this point, I've done over 700 interviews with some of the world's most creative people. And when I started the podcast, please forgive me, this is the way the internet looked in 2005. You can see it premiered February 4th. And this podcast started quite by accident. I started this podcast when I got a cold call from this fledgling internet radio company, this network called Voice America. And I thought they were offering me a job as like a DJ. And they weren't offering me a job at all. What they were doing was offering me an opportunity to pay them to produce a radio show, an internet radio show, that I could then use to promote my practice. This is how desperate I was at the time for some other creative expression that I participated in this ultimate vanity project by paying them to do this podcast. And I did that for 4 years, but it did help reignite my creative spirit. And after 100 episodes on Voice America, I then moved the show to Design Observer, which was one of the very first design blogs, and then joined forces with the TED conference and their audio collective to have the show distributed by them. But it's still a fully independent show that I completely own on my own, and have been doing it on my own with one producer and one researcher for 20 years. So this is my logo, and this is just a small sampling of people that I've interviewed. Initially, when I started the show in 2005, it was really very much a design show. It was called Design Matters. I interviewed designers. It was very much what I call inside baseball talk. Only people that were really interested in design would be interested in the podcast. But after about 5 or 6 years, I started to feel that I was limiting the possibilities for my own research and my own education by limiting it to just graphic designers. And at that point, I sort of re-engineered, my branding hat sort of took over, and I tried to re-engineer the purpose of the show to not just talk to designers, but to talk to anybody that was really intentionally designing the arc of their creative life. And so that allowed me to expand the types of people that I invited to be on the show. And initially, it was this little fledgling internet radio show, which had terrible sound quality. And then over the years, I've been very, very lucky with a wonderful audience. I won a Cooper Hewitt National Design Award. Apple designated it as one of their all-time favorites with some of the best podcasts in the world. I was nominated for 2 Ambies, which is like the Oscars of the podcast world, and a Signal Award as well as 2 Webby Awards. And I also do a lot of writing and editing, and that's become an increasingly more important part of my practice over the last decade. I've written 7 books, and I have 1 new book coming out in April, which is a real departure for me. 2 books that are more or less textbooks, Brand Bible, The Complete Guide for Building, Designing, and Sustaining Brands, which I actually wrote with my students at the School of Visual Arts, and The Essential Principles of Graphic Design. 3 books of interviews that have really extended the ethos of Design Matters in printed form. Brand Thinking, How to Think Like a Great Graphic Designer, and Why Design Matters. And then I've also done 2 illustrated essay books and have contributed to a number of other important books by important people, like Alina Wheeler and Gail Anderson. A lot of the writing that I've been doing more recently is more political in nature. These are 3 examples. For the Philadelphia Inquirer, I wrote an opinion piece after, in the United States, the right to bodily autonomy was taken away from women by the Supreme Court. And so the piece that I wrote about my own experience with the topic was one of the most important pieces that they published in 2022. I'm a person who came out very late in life. I didn't come out until I was 50, and so I was, pardon me. I was invited by the Washington Post to write a piece about what it was like to be queer during the quarantine. And then Fast Company asked me to write an introduction of their book about branding. One of my dreams back in 2003, when I was really trying to reignite my creative spirit, was to write for print magazine. And that seemed to me as the Holy Grail. As a writer, as an aspiring writer in the United States, for me, writing for print seemed like the pinnacle. And I ended up meeting the editor-in-chief at the time, a woman named Joyce Kay, on an airplane to an AIGA conference, not knowing she was the editor-in-chief. We started talking. I invited her to a party that I was participating in with a bunch of folks that I was working with at the blog Speak Up, which was the world's first design blog. And she came to the event, and I found out she was the editor-in-chief. She asked me about 9 months later if I was interested in writing a piece for the magazine, which of course I was. After that, I started writing a regular column called Shelf Life about branding, and it was sort of a boring little thing to do, but I would do anything she'd ask just to have the opportunity to work for the magazine. And so I started writing this 100-word column called Shelf Life about packaging and branding. And then over the years, I was asked to design 2 covers, the 2013 Print Regional Design Annual and the 2017 Regional Design Annual cover. And then the owners of Print Magazine went bankrupt. And they ran it into the ground, sadly, as a legacy brand. The magazine was making money, it just wasn't making enough money. So I was able to, with Steve Heller and 4 other people, buy the brand out of bankruptcy and keep the archives and keep the magazine alive. And so it's online only at the moment. We're raising funds to archive the 80 years of magazines that are sitting in my office in boxes and hopefully keep it alive online forever. I also, in the last, since really 2000, have been bringing my art practice back to life as well. 3 pieces that I did. The first, this apart together, was for a series of billboards in Times Square about the COVID protocol. The one in the center is for a celebration every year that New York has called New York City by Design, and this was a poster that went in people's storefront windows. And then the final piece is a cover of American Poets that I did, just titled, Is It You? There are 2 projects that I've done more recently, in the last couple of years, that I think will define my life. 2 of the most important projects that I've ever done, and I still can't believe that I had the opportunity to do this. I was asked by the Museum of Broadway to design a permanent installation in the museum, and they asked me to do a acknowledgement of the many, many people that lost their lives during the AIDS crisis from Broadway. The Broadway community of artists, performers, actors, set designers, lighting designers, writers, et cetera, was probably the community of people in New York that was most impacted by the AIDS epidemic. And I asked for a list of people, the most prominent artists of the time that lost their lives during the pandemic. And I hand drew 550 names on 2 giant walls, probably close to the size of this wall here, that is now in a permanent exhibit at the museum. And it took me over a year to do this, and I had to restart 4 times because I did it wrong the first 3. But ultimately, I was happy with the way it came out. And here you can see one of a part of the wall. And here's one full wall. So there were 2 big walls. When I first designed this, I thought, okay, I'm going to go from A to L, and then from M to Z, 50% of the alphabet on each wall. And what I found out is that way more people, last name was from A to H. And so when I realized that, I had to completely restart because the math wouldn't work. And then, most recently, I worked with NASA and the Jet Propulsion Lab at Caltech to design a piece of art that would exist on the space probe that was going to Jupiter to look for water on one of Jupiter's moons, the moon Europa. So Europa has a very icy crust that surrounds the entire moon. Scientists believe that there's a very good possibility that under the ice is water, liquid water. And where there's liquid water, there's a possibility for life. And so they've sent this probe to this moon, Europa. And on the outside, I don't know if anybody here remembers, most are probably too young, but there's a probe out called Voyager, which just left our solar system. And on that probe is what is called the Golden Record. Carl Sagan made this Golden Record, which has languages and sounds and music, all from our global culture. So NASA wanted to do something slightly less intensive, but still something meaningful on this probe, and so they designed something called a vault plate. And the vault plate is two-sided. There's an outward-facing side and an inward-facing side. The inward-facing side has a poem on it by the U.S. Poet Laureate Ada Limon and some mathematical equations and so forth. But on the outside, they invited me to design something that would be a message to the universe. And so, because this is a probe looking for water, I worked with linguists and scientists, astrophysicists, and we came up with the idea of having 100, as many languages as we could fit. 110 was what it turned out to be. 110 languages. We got people that spoke those native languages to record the word water. We then translated those words, those audio files, into sound waves, and then I took the sound waves and created this piece of art. And I gave them a whole bunch of different examples, but this one that they chose was mimicking the Big Bang. The interesting thing about sound waves is you can manipulate a sound wave. You can manipulate a sound wave vertically or horizontally. It's like tracking. And it's not going to change the integrity of the wave. It'll either be water or water. And so I was able to play with the size. The centerpiece is a symbol for American Sign Language, and this is now en route to Europa. It'll take 4 years to get there, and then they'll do some investigation, and who knows, maybe we'll find that there's life somewhere else besides Earth. I do a lot of fun little projects. This is a notebook that I designed for Baron Fig, a custom notebook, and I'd always had this vision, this dream of doing something where the lines, the rules of the paper were completely askew, and so that's what this notebook is called, Askew. I designed a deck of cards wherein I took 4 existing decks, put them all together, and then did a piece of original art on top of each card that was just numerically based. Most recently, I designed what I call the Remarkable Life deck, and this was an exercise that I was actually assigned when I took a summer intensive with Milton Glaser, the late great Milton Glaser, wherein he asked us all to envision what our life might look like 5 years into the future. And he said that it was a magical little exercise and that we should all be very, very careful when we did it, because this was one of the most important things he did, he said, and that so many of his former students would tell him 5 years later after doing this exercise that everything came true. When Milton stopped teaching, Milton and I ended up becoming good friends, and when he stopped teaching, I asked him if I could take that exercise and teach it in my classes at the School of Visual Arts. He was also at the School of Visual Arts, and he said yes. And I changed it from 5 years to 10 years only because it took me 12 years to manifest my 5-year plan, and I felt that it might be better for younger people to have a bit more runway. And so I took a lot of the original instructions and made them into cards that people could use as inspiration to consider what the possibilities of their own lives could be. I do a lot of speaking about strategy, most recently for the TED conference, and I'm a very big part of the TED conference now in terms of my participation. They liked the talk. And then lastly, and most importantly, I'm an educator, and I try to infuse in my classes at the School of Visual Arts, where I co-founded with Steve Heller the Masters in Branding program, a sense of possibility for the students. I believe that branding is one of the most important disciplines of our time. We've been, whether we realize it or not, using branding to communicate our humanity for the last 10,000 years, since our first religious symbols, since our first family crests, since the first ways in which we've tried to telegraph to others our affiliations and our beliefs. And I created this program essentially to bring as much humanity and hope into the discipline of branding as I could, and also to teach students what I felt like I needed to learn as I was becoming a brand strategist. So cultural anthropology, behavioral psychology, statistics, ergonomics, and so forth. And so it's a multidisciplinary program that teaches people how to use the discipline of branding to make a difference in the world. It's not about a different size or a different flavor, a different way in which the can open. It's really about how do we make a difference in our life with our beliefs. And I just became a Harvard Business School Executive Fellow, and so I will be developing curricula with them about the business of ideas, which I'm really excited about. They're going to be infusing the ideas of design into the business school. And then my most important work is really trying to make my own difference in the world. And so I'm a board member of the Joyful Heart Foundation, where I've been working with them for the last 10 years to eradicate sexual violence in our culture. We have a program called End the Rape Kit Backlog. The Rape Kit Backlog is sort of a real sort of shameful emblem in the United States. It is terrible that women who have been assaulted can't get justice through the processing of what evidence they are doctors are able to get after someone has been assaulted. And there's been this years, decades-long backlog. And so we are actually nearing the end of that backlog through our work. And so every person that is the victim of sexual assault in any way has a much, much stronger chance of having justice in the world. And so a lot of the work that I do now, I don't really work much with corporate clients anymore. My criteria for doing the work that I do now is, can it make the world a better place? Can it help change beliefs to get people to understand what the ramifications of our behavior are, and to create an opportunity for people to feel more connected through the visual symbols that we make and create. And so, as I say at the end of every podcast, we can talk about making a difference, we can make a difference, or we can do both. And that's what I try to do. All of my work is now centered around identity, how we communicate, how we participate, and how we activate. So thank you again for this incredible, incredible honor. It is an absolute thrill for me to be here with you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. Maybe if you can stay with us a little bit longer, because I'm sure we have many questions in our heads right now. Am I right? But I will let your talk sink in for a minute, because I take this chance to pose the first question. During your talk, I was wondering if Czech language was one of the 110, yeah?
Yes, it is. Absolutely.
Okay, so listen, everybody, we are on the way to Europa.
Yes, you can, if anybody wants to see, not only is it on there, but you can hear the person who actually recorded the word water in Czech. If you go to the NASA website and just put in a search for Europa Clipper, then you will be able to find it. And on the website are the 110 languages. And then you can click on each language, and then you could hear the person that spoke the word.
Perfect, thank you. So, do we have any questions from the audience at this moment? And as I said, don't be shy. There are no wrong questions.
I love questions.
Thank you.
Debbie, you said something that really resonated with me about keeping your creative spirit going. what tips do you have for that? What are your exercises or things that you do to keep that going and to sort of exercise it, essentially?
Well, for me, when I finally decided to do that, it was really out of desperation. I felt like it was, I don't know if you know this term here, in the United States, in a football game, not a soccer game, but a football game, if a team is losing and they need to make a play that might give them more points, that seems like just incredibly impossible to do, it's called a Hail Mary play, where you throw the ball and hope that somebody will get it and run. And so my doing the podcast was a bit of what I call a Hail Mary with my career. I had no idea I'm going to throw this ball. I have no idea if it's going to make it or not. And because it did, but it took a long time. And I often say that anything worthwhile takes a long time. What I would recommend that people do is first, if they feel like they're losing their creative spirit, they probably are. And so it's up to you to decide, do I want to let it go? Or do I want to make sure that I keep it and keep it ignited? And so the first thing you have to do is decide that you want to. And once you decide that you want to, you have to do two things. First, you have to start doing it. And the second is you have to keep doing it. So many people I know, young people, start something, and because of the way we see success portrayed in social media, we think that if we start something, we should be good at it right away, or we should be successful at it like within 6 months. And I would say that before you give up doing something that you want to do, give yourself time to do it. Give yourself time. I did a speech one year, and I was talking about, getting started at something new, and a woman raised her hand. She had a question at the end and asked for some advice. She had started a website, and she wasn't getting any traction, and she was really worried about the fact that nobody was paying attention. And I said, well, how long have you been doing it? And without blinking an eye, she said, 6 weeks. And I'm like, girl, I've been doing things for 6 years that haven't gotten attention. So I think that, give yourself, if you feel like you're wanting to do something, give yourself the opportunity to do it. Don't wait for the confidence. The confidence will come after you do it. Start with courage first. Step into the wanting and the needing to do it, and then wait and continue to work. And don't give up if you don't get success right away, because mastery takes time. So give yourself that time to become a master. Thanks for that question.
Thank you. Any other questions? Well, you already answered a part of my next question, and that was your advice for young students here, because we have a room of full of young creative artists who are at the beginning of their careers. They may be the future of Czech art and design, maybe even international art and design. So what's your advice from your rich experience?
So I've been working, I graduated college in 1983. I've been working now for 41 years. And as I mentioned, the first 10 years were all about rejection and failure. I think that it's really important for young people to give themselves room to make mistakes. So not only to make mistakes, but to not compromise after you make those mistakes. So if you make a mistake, most people now then try something else as opposed to redoing something so that maybe there aren't as many mistakes. And a lot of young people I know, a lot of my young students, I teach graduate and undergraduate classes, think that they start their careers as soon as they graduate thinking, I'm not smart enough, I'm not talented enough, I'm not networked enough, I don't have as much money, I need to, and they compromise right out of the gate. I'll just take this because I know I'm going to get it. I'll take this job because I'm afraid I'm not going to get another job. Try not to compromise until you're 30. Because your 20s, you should be failing. You should be getting, if you're not getting rejected on a regular basis, you're not aspiring high enough. And so try not to retreat from those mistakes and then use those mistakes as a reason to limit what your possibilities are. And try not to limit what your possibilities are because of how you might feel about yourself. Because everyone is insecure. Everyone worries. I've interviewed 700 of some of the most famous, exceptional, acknowledged, award-winning artists and designers of our time. And 99.9% of them are still aspiring to do more and are still worried that they might not be able to be as good as they were. The only 2 people that were just like kind of okay as is were Massimo Vignelli and Milton Glaser, and I interviewed them both when they were in their 80s. And I think that's why. You know, when you get to that age, it's like, how many more Fs do you have to give? Very few. So that's my advice.
Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Any others? I'll be in the at the gallery as well.
Yes,
People
yes.
can ask.
After the talks, when we meet at the gallery, you will have plenty of opportunities to talk to our guests. So think about your questions. Thank you, Debbie, so much.
Thank you.
Well, our second speaker represents the Glasgow School of Art, a renowned institution celebrated for its blend of traditional and innovative approaches. For over a century, it has nurtured artists, designers, and architects who have made lasting contributions to creative fields. With a strong focus on interdisciplinarity, the school continues to shape the future of art and design, just like our Sutnar faculty. Please join me in welcoming the director of the Glasgow School of Art, Penny Macbeth.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for that welcome. Sorry, I feel a bit like I'm stood at a bar, but this is how I've decided to do this talk. So thank you so much for inviting me here, and we're absolutely delighted and deeply honoured as an institution that we're to be awarded the Ladislav Sutnar Award tomorrow alongside some absolutely exceptional other laureates. So I'm absolutely honoured today to be here with you. So as director of Glasgow School of Art, I'm representing, of course, the students, staff, the board, and alumni. So it's the whole institution who are all recipients of this amazing award. And so we'll share with you today a little bit more about the school, and predominantly through my own research and education, articulate why GSA is such a relevant, interesting and impactful art school. So I'm a designer, maker, researcher and educator, and I studied textiles at the Birmingham Institute of Art and Design in the Midlands of the United Kingdom, where I became aware initially of the Glasgow School of Art through the works of Margaret MacDonald McIntosh that you can see here, and her really exquisite works, embroidered, often painted depictions of women in gouache, gesso and stitch, saw pattern transcending the human form, and I was really fascinated by her work. That was not the reason, though, that I decided to take an interest in the role as director at the art school where she studied. What motivated me was the incredible impact of the Glasgow School of Art, its staff, students and graduates on culture and creativity and wider society, and of course across contemporary fine art practice, design, architecture, digital and innovation. I could see this amazing school in this incredibly creative city And I just thought I have to be part of that and part of that history. And what interested me was the need to ensure that this incredible impact of GSA was sustained for the future. So I took over the school in May 2020, following a series of sort of highly detailed and represented in the press fires. So two catastrophic fires that took place within our Mackintosh School of Architecture. And it felt really important to me to go to the school and to actually continue the legacy that I saw that was happening there, had happened there for over 180 years, and to try to keep it in a position of being one of the most important art and design schools in the world, not only in terms of its disciplines, but also its values and purpose, and what our major contribution is to specialisms, but also to addressing the major social and environmental challenges of our time. And of course, I've had the incredible opportunity this morning to go around part of your faculty and school and to encounter a relatively modern School of Art, which is fabulous to see, that is so all-encompassing and so interesting with your state-of-the-art equipment, workshops and studios. It's really heartening for me to see that, and it has been for all of us today. And of course, you're taught by academics who are leaders in their fields, delivering education that aims to produce graduates, who are able to create socially beneficial change and innovative solutions, and of course, respond to the contemporary challenges of our time. And of course, the values and purpose, that strong commitment to be an institution of place, your place Pilsen, and to meet a strong social and economic demand for art education and creative graduates. And that's very much like the original purpose of the Glasgow School of Art. So we were founded in 1845 as one of the government schools of design, and the government schools of design were set up in the UK in the major manufacturing cities during the Industrial Revolution, and were very much of their place, very much about the materials. So Glasgow had ports, it was synonymous with shipbuilding. Scotland was very much a centre of textile production also. So art schools tend to represent their cities and their place. And that's evolved for Glasgow School of Art over the last 180 years. So we were very different and distinctive to the other centres of learning in the city at that time. And we were established significantly to support the manufacturing and industrial base of Glasgow. We were one of the first institutions to have apprenticeships, for instance, and night classes for people that were working in the shipbuilding industry. And it was important, of course, because it was the government schools of design were put in place to drive competitiveness, to actually acknowledge that design was hugely important to manufacturing, but also to promote arts and culture to the wider society. And Glasgow is one of the cities that I think is most proud of its art school. It's really interesting to me that I can get into a taxi in Glasgow and speak about a whole range of arts and making and designing to pretty much any taxi driver that I encounter. I had an in-depth conversation around embroidery the other day, and I find that absolutely mind-blowing and absolutely enchanting at the same time. So, of course, Glasgow was an economic powerhouse and very much was one of the first art schools to educate women. And it was an institution that was dynamic and embraced new artistic and educational ideas and attracted as new artistic and educational ideas, attracting as teachers noted artists, designers and architects from all over Europe, bringing international influence to its education and practice. And the school did not stand still. It's always adapted, it's changed, it's developed its curriculum and specialism, ensuring it remained contemporary and relevant, and importantly, its graduates were able to be influential drivers of change. So over the past 180 years that the school's been established, we've continually developed and we've not stood still as the world and our disciplines have developed through craft, analogue, digital, into hybrid, and now, of course, embracing AI and other evolving technologies, not favouring one over the other, always encouraging us to experiment, to value each other, and to explore and push the boundaries of spaces, disciplines, and the gaps in between those disciplines. So as a textile designer and educator and researcher, I'm going to share the adaptation through this 180-year time period with you through the lens of textiles, and then I'll go on to sort of broaden out into the interdisciplinary approach that now plays across our research and education. So within any of our specialisms at GSA, we can chart that adaptation and change at different paces and different times. But collectively, they've ensured we remain contemporary and relevant, a continually modern arts school that's always looking forward while celebrating its past. So we start in the sort of early 1900s, and like many art schools, women of that era, the opportunity to create and collaborate together fostered ideas of independence, social change and solidarity. This is an embroidered piece. The development of craft and decorative arts alongside the more formal arts soon emerged, and with it needlework. And embroidery was introduced and became synonymous with the Glasgow School of Art and was positioned alongside fine art practice, and it led to a growing number of women joining the art school staff and student population. And the emergence of this style, the Glasgow style, saw influential women artists such as Margaret MacDonald Mackintosh and teachers, artists and designers such as Jessie Newbury and Anne Macbeth, both of whom were pioneers of embroidery education and ensured that embroidery was accepted as an art discipline alongside painting and drawing. And both Newbury and Macbeth shared radical views for the time about embroidery teaching, positioning it alongside painting and drawing as a compulsory part of women's education. And this was the case until the 1970s. It's still a really strong area for the School of Art now. And textiles at Glasgow School of Art, from its earliest inception, worked across many aspects of social change during that time. So at the forefront of this was suffrage and activism, and that was through the production of banners, with students and staff taking time between lessons to stitch and produce banners to support the suffragette movement. Some of the staff were actually incarcerated because of their work within that movement. Also, the establishment of the Ladies Artists Club, which was formed so that women from all disciplines could meet and socialise and discuss art, as their male counterparts did in the Glasgow Arts Club. But also, of course, the development and encouragement of the aesthetic of rational dress movement as part of their emerging style, needing a less constrained and more practical approach to dress, particularly nuanced to make it distinctive to their style. So we have a number of these pieces in our archive and collection. And links are often drawn between the Glasgow style and particularly the work of Margaret MacDonald Mackintosh and the secessionists, particularly Klimt, and the arts and crafts movement, placing Glasgow and its artists at the centre of the avant-garde at that time, and the artists and designers harnessing their genius loci. Glasgow itself provided a respect and admiration for the arts and craft, and the making and teaching of which were held in equal esteem. And within the GSA archives and collections, many artefacts, notes, narratives, lesson plans, and collections of the Glasgow girls are held, placing textiles, specifically embroidery and stitch, at the heart of the school's collections. We now land at another tipping point and a moment of great change for Glasgow as an industrial city and a pivotal moment of change for the School of Art. And this is starting to look at the decline that happened in Glasgow and in many industrial cities in the UK between the 1970s and 80s. And with that, most of the major industrial cities, a moment of industrial decline, economic and political unrest. Excuse me. But with it came opportunity for artists and entrepreneurs to develop new creative and cultural places in the spaces left behind. So artists and designers are very good at making use of empty buildings, empty spaces, creating collectives, creating designers, collectives, etc. And they did that very well within Glasgow. And obviously heavy industry was left behind, and that created these spaces. And a very well-documented cultural-led regeneration happened in the 80s in Glasgow, where the city used its cultural assets, its civic collections, its art school and its graduates to maximum impact. And a legacy we see today, with the city being one of Europe's leading centres for contemporary fine art practice and one of the largest concentrations of creative professional and businesses in the UK. So the insight into the importance of this moment in Glasgow is research by one of our academics, and this is a really interesting exhibition that she held that looked at the sorts of carpet collections from some of the mills in Glasgow. Dr. Helena Britt, who's a Leverhulme Research Fellow, and her research has brought insights into various moments of GSA's history and has worked alongside the designers, bringing a unique and important approach to archival studies, collecting things like oral histories, collaborating with some of the designers in question, and then bringing her own insight as a printed textile designer to these areas. Another area of inquiry for her is the work of Fraser Taylor, who studied at GSA in the late 70s, and this continued the notion of drawing through textiles. Drawing's an incredibly important part of the GSA curriculum throughout all of the different disciplines, and it's still a real engine of our art school in the way it is for your art school. So I was delighted to see a lot of you in there, the drawing studios this morning. Drawing through textiles, adornment and decoration for the body, but with a wholly new gaze. So this was very much about pop culture. This was the work that Fraser Taylor developed when he left GSA and defined a collective called The Cloth, and he collaborated with a lot of 80s brands like Paul Smith, Browns, Yves Saint Laurent, Liberty, and was very much became part of that 80s zeitgeist, very much working across music, clothes, popular culture, and exporting what was very much thought of that courageous avant-garde Glaswegian spirit to London. I'm not sure really London knew what had hit it really. All of that coming together in this amazing cloth, the physicality of the marks that dance across the clothing form. And this was this incredible exhibition that we had last year in the art school in our main gallery, curated by Jenny Brownrigg, one of our major curators, and also Helena Britt, that brought together the work of Fraser Taylor, but also all of the kind of context that sat within his work, from music to popular culture to magazine design. So it was wonderful to see it in that way. And then into the 80s and 90s, which built on the legacy of artists and designers' development of the previous era. And Glasgow became European City of Culture. So again, synergies between ourselves and yourselves, and transformed its creative and cultural legacy forever. And it really put Glasgow on the map, and certainly a lot of the other major cities in the UK look to Glasgow as a leader in creative and contemporary culture, partly because of that moment. This is the work of a collective called Timorous Beasties, and they set up in the early 90s, and they're a very, really famous cloth print company, wallpapers, and they do these amazing scenes that look very decorative, but are often about urban decay, or there might be somebody, I don't know, drinking out of a bottle on a bench. So they're real life scenes that are kind of portrayed in quite a decorative way, quite interesting, quite surreal and dreamlike. And then a sort of later designer that followed on from that was the legendary fashion designer Jonathan Saunders, whose incredible use of colour and print, most of you, particularly if any of you are fashion designers here, will almost certainly know about. And then a final moment in my little textile history is to present what has happened in this near period in the 2020s, actually the COVID moment, which brought a plethora of movements and global challenges. How does a modern art school respond to this moment in time that we now find ourselves? So this is the incredible work of one of our students, Kiali Tinang, and it's based on the notion of useless machines, and it tackles environmental racism and waste colonialism, but via the engaging and playful way that Kylie works. So Kylie was sat at home researching this work. She's originally from Cameroon and began researching how people's lives were being affected by electronic waste recycling in Ghana, and was driven to create a collection of objects that mimic the aesthetics of waste and mimic the movement of machines. Oh, sorry, I've moved on too far. Kylie and that of her contemporaries was uniquely of this moment, and it tackling identity, race, sustainability in a unique and insightful way. And during COP26, we were able, which was hosted in Glasgow, we were able to come out of our lockdown for a short period of time, and Kylie was part of a symposium that we ran with the Eden Project and Grimshaw Architects to discuss sustainability and recycling. And she made a tremendous impact in that space and has gone on to be a contemporary artist, in fact. So in terms of being a modern art school, what does the journey through Glasgow School of Art Textiles tell us about how we've remained contemporary and relevant at continually modern art school for more than 180 years? Throughout each period of change and adaptation, our students and graduates have responded, setting the direction of travel as much as responding to it. Fierce collaborators, always challenging, always questioning, and being of their time. One of the things I think is most unique about the Glasgow School of Art students is how collaborative, how genuinely supportive they are of each other. I don't think they're particularly competitive. They're incredibly inquisitive, supportive, and love their practice. And it brings this incredible spirit to everything that we do in the art school. And it's something I've not really witnessed anywhere else other than Glasgow. And of course, particularly our Scottish cohort are drawn from all over Scotland, the many islands, some of which are Gaelic speakers, and then the urban belt. And so there's this genuinely rich collaboration that happens between our students, the students that come from the rest of the UK, and then our international cohort, a truly kind of exceptional group of people. And they've done this from Glasgow, a place which is intrinsic to them and the work they produce. And of course, Glasgow is like many industrial cities, has seen rapid growth and decline and then renewal, which I've talked about, and now the challenges of this new era. It's now a city going through another renewal, using culture and heritage as drivers for change and regeneration in its city centre. And that's core to the development of the art school also. And alongside that, innovation districts harnessing the city's academic and economic strengths. And we work very much in partnership with our city, as you do here, and try to be really good partners to everyone we work with. But we also utilise place as a driver within our institution. So we work across the urban, we work into areas like health and ageing, climate neutrality, sustainability and digital. But we also have an incredible rural campus in the Highlands and Islands, which is very small, but also looks at things like circular economy and soil health and agriculture. This is an amazing piece of work actually produced by one of our students based in Glasgow, one of our fine arts students from this year. And she is from a rural community. So she sheared the sheep that produced this on her parents' small holding. She sheared the sheep, she processed it, she made these shelters. They're absolutely incredible art installations and shelters and make you really think about place and identity when you're inside them. Really exciting work. The Modern Art School is central to this renewal. Our staff, collaborators, researchers and practitioners across academia and industry, and our researchers are often to be found collaborating with medicine or manufacturing as much as they are with other creatives. Our graduates, many of whom choose to stay in the city post-graduation, forge their own careers, and of course are central to the city's creative economy and ecosystem, and work across the creative industries, galleries, film, TV production, but also into areas like banking, science, engineering, health, digital and innovation. Just a really wide range of disciplines. We kind of try to reinforce the fact there are no barriers for creative practice why would we recognise them? We just need to adapt within our various contexts. This is some of that work. This is the digital human that we co-created with the medical team at Glasgow University. The art school itself, of course, is a contributor to the city's gross value added in economic terms, and is a major driver of urban renewal and place. And we have to remind people about that constantly. I do a lot of reminding people about how important we are to their place. We have unique convening power. We can bring people together, like this event is bringing us together today. And we are a magnet for creative and academic talent to the city, for the creative and cultural industries. And we are really passionate about promoting Scottish creative and cultural industries as Scotland's only independent art school. We also empower, change and create impact that is both collaborative and transformative. So we believe in deep specialism, but we also believe in interdisciplinary and how that can be placed, and how we enable our students to collaborate to become as useful as possible in whichever field they find themselves. So we believe in that collaborative and transformative nature of creative practice, and we see that as hugely important to the challenges of the contemporary world around us. So that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Penny, very much. So this is the time for your questions again. Anybody? I am sure everybody is dying to know what your advice for young art and design students would be to succeed in today's fast-changing world.
Well, one of them would be to not be afraid to ask questions, because there is never a silly question. I've sat in your position previously and thought, well, I might look really silly if I ask a stupid question. There is no stupid question. Everybody around you will be thinking, yeah, I wish I'd had the nerve to do that. But sometimes you want to ask that question quietly in a one-to-one with someone. And of course, we're all available to you after this, during the exhibition, to do that. But also, what was the question again?
Your advice for young art students to succeed in today's world.
I mean, I think Debbie pretty much covered it all off, but really to just don't stop believing in yourself. People will like to make you think that there is some magic formula or that they know best. They don't. You really just have to believe in your own innate creative spirit, keep that going, keep it healthy, help each other. If you look around you, you've got lots of friends probably in the audience, you've got lots of colleagues. Help each other, support each other, talk to each other. I just think if you can keep in touch with your peers, your closest friends, but also actually some of your harshest critics, they're the people you need around you. You need to keep each other going. You're each other's tag team, really. And Debbie used a sports analogy, but actually some of that thinking is really important in the creative sector. So do that, because if you do drop it and pause it for a little while, it's this jewel you carry with you. Not everyone has it, so we're very lucky people. Just keep it burning, keep it going, and you'll be fine.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
So if there's no other questions, thank you, Penny. Oh, you do. The mic is coming.
The Dean has a question.
Yes, because you have described the relationship between the city, let's say, Glasgow, and the School of Art. Does it count also for the relation between the citizens and your students?
Yes, okay. So the citizens and our students I'll discuss that in several ways, because we've been quite challenged in that space. So I've said to you before, you know, Glasgow's a city that loves its art school. It does. So you'll meet pretty much anyone and they'll have a sister, a brother, a daughter, whatever, that's been to the art school. They're not dismissive of their art school. They're absolutely proud of it. So they're slightly dismayed by what happened to the Glasgow School of Art during the 2 very well documented fires. And so in our very near neighbourhood, Garnet Hill, the citizens there were quite rightly had enough of Glasgow School of Art, a little bit actually, by the time I arrived. And we've had to work tremendously hard. And of course the graduates come and go. They're there for a period of time, the students, and so they might think that was slightly odd. So the students have a great relationship, I think, with the city. I think the art schools had to really work hard, and we need to continue working hard to be good partners with our colleagues in the city, and to not always expect to take but to give. So that was something that we've worked really hard now to try to support and enable. So we have artists in residence going into a lot of our local schools around us. We have a school in Paisley, which is an area just outside Glasgow, Castlehead School, where we work alongside their whole range of their disciplines like maths and IT, but we bring in this creative approach, and we've worked with them in partnership for over 10 years, and they've seen really huge benefits from that really intense creative support that we've been able to bring to each other. So partnership with community is hugely important for the teaching staff, but also for the students as well, to have opportunities to engage. Because if you don't connect to your place properly, then that's not really very helpful. And of course, when we're in the Highlands, of which we have a lot of international students in the Highlands, that's also exceptionally important for us, because that community is a very different kind of community. It's much more rural, dispersed, etc.
Thank you. Okay, so that was Penny Macbeth. And our final guest represents the Idea magazine, a well-respected Japanese publication that has been a key player in design discussions for over 70 years. Known for its coverage of design trends, theory, and culture, the magazine offers innovative ideas and explores diverse perspectives within the design world. By focusing on significant conversations around design practice, Idea has become a valuable resource for artists, educators, and students. Please join me in welcoming the magazine's editor-in-chief, Mrs. Madoka Nishi.
Today, I have one copy of the magazine, so during my presentation, please have a look and pass. Hello everyone, my name is Madoka Nishi. Thank you for joining my presentation in Japanese. こんにちは皆さん。私の名前はまどかです。よろしくお願いします。Let me first introduce about myself and Idea magazine. I've been the editor-in-chief of Idea magazine since 2018. I have been working as an editor for Idea since 2014. So almost 10 years spending with the magazine. Idea is a now quarterly magazine focused on graphic design and typography, published by a general publisher called Seibundo Shinkosha in Tokyo, Japan. But it is a small department with a core editorial team of usually 2 or 3 people. Really tiny space, tiny office, and dirty. However, we have been around for 70 years and have never stopped showcasing the Japanese graphic design scenes and the work of the designers from around the world. The first thing I have to say is this award is a tribute to the efforts of successive generations of staff. In addition to my graduate, to the chess people, I would like to thank the previous editors who have kept the magazine alive to this day, and our leader in Japan. So let's start the presentation. Today I will talk about the short history of the Idea magazine and our future tasks. So this is the first issue of Idea magazine. Idea predecessor, the advertising and commercial art journal, 広告会, in Japanese mean advertising art world. First published in 1926. Ceased publication in 1941 due to wartime restriction of speech and supply. About 10 years later, Takashi Miyayama, who had been editor-in-chief of 広告会, took the initiative to create Idea as a design magazine for a new era. These are the words Kikumatsu Ogawa, who is the president of the Seibundo Shinkosha in the first issue of Idea magazine. In 1952, Ogawa went on a trip organized by the Japanese newspaper to oversee the media in the US and Europe. There, he decided to create a magazine for the bottom-up of the Japanese graphic design world, anticipating the advertising and design world be seen as more in demand in post-war society. The name of Idea magazine derives from Ogawa's idea that it is more important to create software than hardware. He is Kikumatsu. This is the first spread of the first issue. On the left is the table of contents, and on the right is an article of Raymond Savignac, illustrator. At that time, Idea consisted of two parts. One is a graphic art, which featured graphic work, and second is editorial, with collaboration from designers and commentators. Idea's tagline was international advertising art, and true to its slogan, the magazine has a surprisingly international flavor, even as readers look at that today. It's also showing that the designers themselves have been very much a part of the conversation and writing about the design. As a platform for the development of post-war Japanese graphic design, Idea has established relationship and collaboration with designers and writers from around the world. And with other industry magazines as a window to introduce not only Japanese graphic design, but also Western graphic design trend to Japan. The structure of each issue's project and the layout of the magazine have been gradually updated by the editorial team, but the pages of the little magazine remained in the memory of each readers as a landscape of the graphic design in a particular era. The role of the magazine medium has sometimes been not only to record and disseminate information, but also create its own contents, developed, communicate, and pass it on the future generation. Idea is accumulation of recorded information, established network of designers, editors, and writers from around the world, and the direct result of the effort of countless people involved in the creation and making of each volume. Harnessing the diverse, colossal amount of information contained in a single publication like idea that will one day be a future resource is challenge that need to be addressed. On the one hand, there's immediate need to rethink the role of the paper journal like idea in the face of the publishing recession, distributing program, and an age of digitization. We have decided to see these drastic changes as a turning point, and which the network that has surprised idea along the way in mind. We have created a future with an archive focused on this issue. This is a 400 issue of Idea magazine. Maybe you can see the covers of back issues. We photographed the covers of all back issue in this issue. In the gallery, displayed photos of past issue as posters, along with actual copies of current issue. Please take a look. This is the inside. We are focused lots of archive in Japanese, one of the university, one of the gallery. To what extent is the ephemeral media of graphic design worth preserving? Will these preserved items be seen as attractive resource by future generation? In an age where online expression has become the norm, it is particularly important for design archive to document the materiality and physicality of variable, tangible object. It is important for these archives to probably represent the relationship between object and the people involved behind the scenes, so that the documented data to keyword can become contextual information and be used for future creative archives. So as a first step toward the formation of such a living archives, we have launched an electronic version of the magazine, starting with issue 400. The layout is the same as the paper magazine, but it is conveniently text searchable. It is also available for purchase by anyone abroad. You can find more information on the official website of Idea Magazine, or buy it from the e-commerce shop using this URL. This is not advertising, but please have a look. I am sure that there are many publishers, museums, and galleries around the world focusing similar challenges, and I hope that this day will allow me to explain the initiative in the chat. It was Ladislav Sutnar who gave me the opportunity to do this, and I pay tribute to his work and to all those who archive his history. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madoka, for your presentation. And again, I have the same questions as always. Any questions from the audience? I actually had one, but you already answered it. You know, as European and Europe-based people, how we can access the magazine. So you have seen we can get it online. So let's do it. And we'll be able to actually leaf through and touch 10 issues of the Idea magazines at the gallery. So make sure you take this opportunity and have a look at those wonderful, tangible magazines. I have a question. Nobody? One question for you about the content of the magazines, how you choose your topics, and the people and artists you will feature in each issue.
Thank you for your question. First, we are trying to keep a balance between domestic issue and world topic, because 80% of our readers is in Japan, but 20% is abroad. Recently, many Chinese people really reading Idea magazine, so I will try to find a topic from Asia, especially China. So I always contact to Chinese designers or my friend in China and get the information.
Okay, thank you very much. So that was Madoka Nishi for the Idea magazine. You have a question? Okay, one more
Yes,
question.
I do. Did I forget? Okay. I wondered, because you said the digital version has the same layout as the printed version. Did you consider like all the opportunities we have now with interactive design? Because I was thinking of Warren Lehrer, who was also like one of our laureates of the Ladislav Sutnar Prize, and he's working with this I think many options which digital world gives us. So did you consider something like that, like an interactive, more interactive, or more adapted with digital tools version in online?
Firstly, we use the special app for the digital version. That's why we can search the keywords. And I think there are a lot of content in the back issue of IDEA magazine. Recently, one researcher from US contacted me, and they are searching about the kind of black art issue in the 70s, and there is no archive to find that article, so the searching is really important for the digital version. That's why we tried.
Yes, because I was wondering, because you are very much leading a magazine in the design, let's say printed design, and it would be also interesting to see like such a platform for all these new emerging design, which is either interactive or reactive or whatever. So that was the question. Thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you again. So that was Madoka Nishi, IDEA Magazine.
Thank you very much.
So that was our third speaker, and all that is left is to say thank you. Thank you, our wonderful guests, for your thought-provoking presentations. We have learned a lot, and I think that all of us have a lot to think about tonight, about art, design, and our future, about not being afraid of failing and believing in ourselves. So thank you for coming and for sharing. Thank you all who have been here with us in person, and also thank all of you who have been watching us online. And I would like to extend our thanks to the City of Pilsen for long-term support, and especially for the support of the Ladislav Sutnar Prize. As I mentioned before, this is not the end. We are just moving a little bit down the corridor to the incubator gallery, where we will meet in just a minute to open the laureate exhibition, where you will have the opportunity to ask more questions and speak in private with our dear guests. Thank you all for your attention. Have a good day, and thank you for being here with us.